if it was for me and not for these four esteemed gentlemen. The judges! So for the four of you, what we've actually gathered you here today is to have you as the competitor, and these are your judges. So they're going to provide feedback. I'm kidding. Ladies and gents, I've already received so much fantastic feedback about the evaluation sessions that were held this week, and I've passed it on to the panel already. They're always very pleased to hear that what they're doing is making a difference, and from everyone I've spoken to about this week, literally every single competitor has been over the moon with the feedback they've received and the advice they've been given on what to do next. So I'm really excited about having these guys here right now to flesh that out a little bit more. So what we'd like to do is just to get each of the guys who's up here to run through just briefly, give you that nutshell on what the category is, just for those who would need to hear it again, but also in the context of any changes that might have occurred, especially with presentation moving to performance, which Dusty can speak on. So I'm going to hand it to each of them to talk through the category, and then give a bit of a debrief after that in general about what learnings they have from the contest, and any general observations that they can pass on to us for things that we can work on, not only as competitors ourselves, but as performers and as an organisation as well. So I'll hand over to Dusty first. I think I might, do you want to come up here? Does that work?
Sure. Hello, can you hear me? Yeah. There's a microphone. This feels very official. Hello. My name is Dusty Schleier from Nashville, Tennessee, and I think I was looking around, I saw most of you in evals, I think. I don't know if this is just our pod of eval groups, but it seems like a lot of you, we went over this before. This is the very first time that we've had the new performance category. So this is the very first cycle for all of us. We are no longer putting down presentation scores, but we're putting down performance scores. I just want to say, and I mentioned this to a lot of you, that the state of the work that you're putting into the performance here in Australia is really excellent. I think that you're doing the right things, you have the right coaches and the right leaders that are moving you forward. I think down here, even just looking at score sheets over the past 10 years and seeing the improvement that you've had here in this country is pretty amazing progress. I mean, the quartet contest were all great, and even seeing that top 10 cutoff of all, it was a 71 something, right, average over to make the finals. We're trying to think of a district that has that level of quality. I don't think we can come up with one right now, right? So you guys are really doing just an amazing job. And it feels like we're making the natural progression to what the performance category is all about. That's believable, honest performances. Ideally, the performances that score at the top of the scale in barbershop contests should be the same ones if you went to and sang in a community, the audience would say, I like that performance the best, right? It should be the same, where I think going back 20 years, maybe longer than that, when it was more about trying to train our singers to do a certain thing that the winners were doing, everything was kind of very internal. We just kept training our folks to be like the best ones that were winning the medals, not necessarily what was relevant to the audience outside of our little barbershop community. So we've been heading that direction and just formalized the name change from presentation, which again, I mentioned this to a lot of you too. The word presentation means to present something. It kind of sounds artificial on its own. So it's nice we're able to kind of put that in the past and move forward with the performance. So our category scored you 1 to 100. On how entertaining your performance was with whatever you gave us. So if you were singing a love song, it was how romantic were you trying to accomplish your feelings. If it was comedic, how funny was it? If it was whatever you give, any song can score at the top of the scale. A simple song or the most complex visual plan, it's just how well you did whatever you decided to give us, which I think is kind of a change from the way it may have been in the past, and we've been heading that direction, but just formalizing it to the new category. And we'll go over some questions here in a minute after we hear from these other three lovely gentlemen. Tony, you want to go next?
Sure. Pretty good, Dusty. That was awesome. I'm Tony Colosimo. I'm a singing judge. I'll talk just briefly about the singing category and echo Dusty's thoughts about a fantastic convention and contest. I thought it was a really high-quality choral product, a high-quality barbershop product. It was a high-quality musical product that we saw this week, and it was really cool to see it all showcased again last night. So thanks for that. It's my first time in Australia, and I really am having a really good time. So back to singing, but I was telling you that for personal gain. Thank you, Joe. Joe's the director of my chorus, and he makes things easy on me at every opportunity. All that said, the singing category is laid out pretty much so that the things that we're evaluating are not necessarily always the things that we are working on, because what you evaluate is a product of the things that you probably are working on. So if you're looking at a person singing with really fantastic vocal quality and singing in tune, they will have some of the things that we're looking for in our evaluation. So when we write down a score, we're not necessarily going to coach all of the aspects of the number that we're looking at, because what we're judging is the byproducts of the good singing that you're doing. So I'm not judging how your lungs work, but how your lungs work are helping you move in the direction of what we evaluate. So I'll talk first about the things you evaluate and then the things that you can do to make them great. So a lot of the groups that we saw this week were singing with really amazing tone and generated these really exciting, amazing overtones that we judge. The more overtones, the better. The more frequently they're used appropriately inside the music, the better. The other thing that we hear is really emotionally available performers singing with expressive diction and with proper inflection and changes in tone color. Those kinds of things are things that make for the great quartets. You hear a great example of it in the gold medalists forefront who came. They're just really masterfully demonstrating how to be expressive and at the same time generate ridiculous amounts of overtones all at the same time. It helps that they've got a guy like Brian down at the bottom to lay a foundation for those overtones. When you translate that into a chorus, section unity on those amazing tones, especially in the lower parts, generate overtones that the upper parts can become unified in doubling or reinforcing. So without going too far into that, that's kind of one of the byproducts that we're evaluating. But the main goal of that is to really have a healthy produced tone. Is it freely produced? And free is relative, right? Because when you're singing, you're by definition not free. The freest tone you can make is, right? That's the most relaxed your vocal folds can be. And as we go along, you get more and more tension. And balancing that tension with energy and excitement can only go so far before it turns into a negative thing, right? So it's kind of like surfing. Like you can't go in the water and just sit there and hope that you move forward. There's a certain amount of natural tension that needs to be there, but just the right amount is what you need. And so that's the kind of elements of vocal quality where they start, and then the other things that get in the way or that are supporting you. There's tons of musculature around the voice, and how to treat those things is a big focus for the singing category. Over the course of the past 4 or 5 years, I'd say that the singing category has focused a lot more on natural pedagogy that a lot of other choral styles are using, as opposed to some traditionally barbershop vowel matching focus and those kinds of things. It's more about really proper vocal technique now. Obviously, we also judge intonation, and I think we're making inroads on the physics of intonation, and actually what makes something really truly in tune. We heard a beautiful example of that in your second place chorus. You have a nickname. What is it? The Fronties or the Festies? Yeah. Absolutely fantastic example of how intonation works inside of a barbershop song. Because when you've got the 7th and the 3rd, and then you go around the clock, theory-wise, these guys can talk to you more about that. The notes that they're singing change and really turn into just the perfect ringing spot. So you put that with a really great voice, and you get the thing I talked about at the beginning. You get overtones and expressive singing. So we saw a lot of that demonstrated during this convention, and I think we're going in the exact right direction. I don't think there's a whole lot of changes to make other than to keep rewarding the right things and keep doing the right things. So that's the singing category's perspective on how things are going here. It's great. I'm really glad to be here. Thanks. Steve.
Oh my gosh! Now we get to the exciting part, the music category. Let's hear it. Word. Well, there's so much to talk about. We're going to use 2 people to do it. Steve and I are both music judges, and much like our friends here, we are very excited to be here. And you've got just really exciting things going on in Australia, whether you know it or not. You will notice on Steve's badge, his says B-O-R, and that has nothing to do with his personality. He is on the board of review for the music category, so he is one of the uppity ups of the music category. So rather than me droning on about what I think the music category is, I'm going to let you hear it from the horse's mouth himself. So please welcome our board of review, Steve Trainman. At least he got the right end of the horse, so that's good. It really, to echo the comments of my esteemed colleagues here, it's been truly a pleasure to be here. The level of musicality, the level of performance certainly is indicative of what we see in some of the finest districts. And I would say that kind of that secret ingredient that groups like Westminster have taught us of the importance of the fraternity. And just how much groups like each other and how much they work hard and they play hard together. That's clearly evident here amongst all the groups that we met with. So I think that formula is certainly something that's going to continue to demonstrate it and to reap rewards as you move forward. Musically, what our category is listening for, in short, is the song and the arrangement as performed. Right? And that is the nutshell. So let's talk about those two things, the song and the arrangement. First thing we look at is the music that you presented. Did you help us preserve the barbershop style? There are no barbershop songs. Other than songs that have been written by barbershoppers, there's no such thing as a barbershop song. Barbershop is simply a style of arranging music. So the question is, the music that you chose, does it lend itself to the hallmarks of our style? Is it four-part a cappella with the melody and a middle voicing? Does it lend itself to the type of chord progressions and the consonant harmony that produces the lock and ring of our style? Is it something that allows you to develop the music either through the melody or lyrically or rhythmically? Does it provide a form which is consistent with the type of music we have? Does it have an intro? Is there a verse and a chorus and a tag? Or is there a song that feels balanced? All these things we listen for and make sure that you're singing good barbershop. And frankly, everything we heard on the stage this weekend were great examples of the style. Everything from songs written in the late 1800s to songs sung by Joe Cocker, right? So they all work really well in the style. As performed is a big thing. A lot of times we'll hear a song performed by a championship group and it sounds really barbershop. It sounds great, and then a group perhaps not at the same level tries to sing it and it doesn't feel quite as barbershop, right? So that's the as performed element. Some groups are able to make certain arrangements, certain voicing, certain progressions ring more, just based on their level of as the ensemble or as singers. So we do listen to as performed, and we then judge your ability as a musician to bring the music to life. So what do you do with the gifts given to you by the composer and by the arranger, and then develop that into an expression of music, right? So do we look at the melody and how do we develop the melody through the song? How do we develop as the song progresses so that it feels like it's heading toward a climactic moment? How do we use the rhythmic elements given to us by the arranger? Things like pickups and echoes. How do we use embellishment? So that's basically, in a nutshell, what we're listening for. And we heard fantastic examples of the style here this week. Wow. I couldn't have said it any better myself. I don't know how many of you follow Facebook, but Steve and his wonderful barbershopper wife, Renee, their daughter just got engaged an hour ago. That has absolutely nothing to do with the music category whatsoever. But I think I'll take this as an opportunity to transition into some general things that we notice. Does that sound okay, Mr. Morris? Perfect. Why don't we work backwards this time? We can go, kind of end with Dusty. So we're just going to kind of talk about some general things that we noticed in all of the performances for quartets and choruses. And I think for me, it's really one thing. and I think we noticed it for the most part in just about, we're using broad generalisms, but I would say for the most part, all of the performances, because we don't have too many performances that are scoring in that mid-A category. I think that there are two ways that you can perform a song. You can perform it accurately, or you can perform it artistically, okay? There were, without a doubt, certain elements of all performances that were artistic. But when we're looking to move the Australian organization into the 80s, not a score that just starts with an 8, but really get into the 80s, we are looking for the performance to be more artistic than accurate, okay? Art, which is what we're all doing, will never ever be perfect. So I think that many of our groups strive for perfection. Can it be any more in tune, or is it perfect? Are my notes and words right? Let me tell you, friends, if this was a competition on note and word accuracy, you would be leading the way as the quadruple-time international champion of the entire world, okay? But there's so much more to just doing notes and words and rhythms accurately. One of the songs that was sung many, many times over this weekend was The Way You Look Tonight. Just take your finger, put it like this, and do this for me. Someday, when I'm awfully low, when the world is cold, I will feel a glow just thinking of you. Go.
Someday, when I'm awfully low, when the world is cold, I will feel a glow just thinking of you.
Good. Now, if you imagine that we were all sitting in a plane right now, okay, and that plane, the speed of that plane was decreasing, what would happen to the altitude of that plane? It would get lower. If you imagine that every syllable that comes out of our mouth is just a little plane, okay? Someday, just kind of shooting right out of your mouth. You with me? Say yes.
Yeah.
Okay? Just making sure. If that plane goes someday, meaning the air, and Tony can talk more about it, but that air that you're using to produce the tone is not supporting that tone, then it's going to go someday when I'm awfully low, right? And that's going to generally get a score that starts with a 5 or maybe even a 6. And if you're one of those quartets or choruses that are looking to go from a 5 to a 6 or maybe even a 6 to a 7, you're going to want to make sure that the air supporting that tone or that syllable or that plane coming out of your mouth is not going someday, but someday when I'm awfully low. Does that make sense? Say yes.
Yes.
Okay, you're going, I said, does that make sense? And you went, okay, so just say yes.
Yes.
Okay, good. So really the development of the song. And then once you do that, the thing that we find in music, especially in the music category, is that a song has to develop. So a song must go from A to B and not go from A to A. So especially if we continue on that song, the song goes ba 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 da 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 da, and then after that it goes da 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 da, right? But you notice the first time it's someday when I'm awfully low, when the world is cold, I will feel a glow just thinking of you and the way you look tonight. The second time it's lovely with a smile so warm. Many, many, many of our groups in the US and a majority of the groups here in Australia will sing both of those choruses almost exactly the same. Did you sing any wrong notes? No. Did you sing any wrong words? No.
Just one.
Okay.
No.
Okay, but there's so much more. So you sang nothing wrong, but you got a 72. Congratulations. If you want to make that higher, then you have to start worrying less about accuracy and more about what is going to make your performance of that song unique. Because we heard especially that song 6 times this weekend. And for the most part, you could say, yeah, well, I held this chord a little bit longer than their chorus. For the most part, they were all kind of the same performance of the same song. And we don't give you a score, you tell us exactly what to write down on that paper. Okay? So I know that if I'm sitting and watching and listening to your performance, and in the middle of the performance I think, I wonder when the lunch break is going to be, then I know that your score is automatically going to start with a 5 or a 6. As opposed to a score that starts with an 8 or even a 9, I forget that I'm even sitting in a contest. And I get enraptured with what you're doing. That, in my opinion, is one of the biggest opportunities, not only for your organization, but for all of us as barbershoppers, as generally amateur singers working very hard to do professional level things. So I'll stop there and let you talk. Ditto. No, I couldn't agree more. And again, this is a sweeping generality, right? But the development of the music, and I would add to that taking risks, and risking being vulnerable. I think in order to achieve what Joe just talked about and to create art, you have to be willing to fail. You've got to be willing to take a risk that may or may not pay off. And then and it has to be a genuine risk, and providing genuine emotion and tied into the music. When that happens, great things can happen, right? Without that, you can sing clean. In fact, if you just are simply singing every note, every word, things are clean, things are ringing. We're not hearing any distractions from the music category perspective. That will get you to an 80. It is impossible to get any further if you don't transcend the technique to art. So developing the music, taking risks. I would add from a rhythmic perspective, we heard a bunch of rhythmic themed songs. One of the opportunities with rhythmic themed songs is to realize that the lyrics, oftentimes in those songs, are simply a delivery mechanism for the groove. And too often we treat lyrics as the most important element, because a lot of us are lyricists at heart. But in a rhythmic themed song, the rhythm has to be, the band has to be the most important element. Right, so repeat after me. 1, 2, 3, 4.
1, 2, 3, 4.
1, 2, 3, 4.
1, 2, 3, 4.
1, 2, 3, 4.
1, 2, 3, 4.
1, 2, 3, 4.
1, 2, 3, 4.
1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and
1 and 2 and 3 and 4 and
1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a
1 and a 2 and a 3 and a 4 and a
1, a 2, a 3, a 4, a
1, a 2, a 3, a 4.
So it's all the same pillars, but very different treatments of the beat, right? And I think a real opportunity here is to explore on rhythmic themed songs, explore the groove, explore not the benchmarks in time, the meter, but explore the groove, how the beats are subdivided, explore the band, explore just the natural percussiveness and rhythmic drive of the lyric rather than the lyrics themselves. Does that make sense? Yeah. I think that those are some elements, and frankly, patience. Patience in a rhythm song, because particularly ones that are backbeat driven, there was a tendency to feel like the excitement overtook the meter and we just started to feel rushing. Right? A backbeat-driven song requires patience. It requires us to have this relentless pulse that develops through the course of the song. I think those are some opportunities to explore as you're moving forward, particularly on those kind of songs. Anthony?
I'll try and be fast here. There are a couple things that I just want to point out. One. As I mentioned earlier, the state of Australian singing is very, very strong. I think I echo Joe's statement in that if I were to look at intonation and say, okay, is there an area to work on? I would say intonation is an area where we don't have to think as hard about as maybe we are right now. Right now, intonation is a strength of many of our top choruses here in Australia, and I think that as a society, you can say, great, let's maintain that level. Let's have that as our standard, an absolutely flawless level of intonation. Great, fantastic. So then the next level is about how to actually produce the voice. And I'd say the biggest hurdle for the next level of our groups is not to ring more. It's not to how do they get the quality of ring that Forefront does, but to get the quality of ring that Forefront does along with the emotional accessibility. I know it sounds like I'm talking about the same thing as music, but really in the end, using word sounds to connect the vocal production of what you're doing into an actual song, into a language that communicates with people, is what makes the difference between an emotionally moving performance and a performance that rings a ton. Okay, so we can ring at an A level and not score an A in the singing category because the singing category requires that the voice is used in an effective way to make people go places, right? There were multiple examples of quartets that rang a lot. I mean, some of their tags, you hear those chords and you just go, wow, that's amazing. But then you hear Forefront and you stand up, right? And the difference is not that they're ringing differently. I mean, it is, right? I mean, I think there are a few elements of there, but it's not by the 20 points, the 15 points that are left.